Hello everyone, my name is Gregory Schnazy and let's talk about Bitcoin Borrow Die. As always, these videos are for educational and entertainment purposes only. They are not financial or tax advice. Bitcoin Borrow Die is powered by Bitstack. Build your wealth in Bitcoin terms. Visit us at www.trybitstack.com. Today's topic is portfolio construction, payday, bonuses, and what to do when you have money coming in the door primarily through work. There's four main buckets we want to touch on: emergency cash, stretch cash holdings, Bitcoin, and then strategy and beyond. Again, if you're new to the channel, to summarize the Bitcoin Borrow Die strategy, we're buying rapidly appreciating assets. We borrow against them at a low LTV, which is a non-taxable event, so that we can bring in income that way. And then when we pass on, our inheritors receive the assets at a stepped up tax basis, so they don't have to pay tax on capital gains and depreciation. Now there's four main layers or four main buckets to a portfolio for a simple construction. I mean, you can make this much more complex. These are also very personal decisions for you and your family. But this is a very simple plan that one can execute that will give you good upside while also tons of protection for life occurrences and things that happen. And the base layer, or the base first step here, is emergency cash, of having like 2 to 3 months of expenses in cash holdings. I prefer to use a place like River, where they will pay you interest in Bitcoin, which is nice. So the cash is doing something. You could use your bank account, E-Trade. It could be physical cash if you'd like. But you need something that you can get access to extremely quickly if something happens. So like, emergency medical bill comes through, a car payment comes that you weren't expecting. All sorts of things can happen in life. A tree falls in your house. Who knows, right? But you want to have, anywhere between 2 to 3 months in cash, just so you never have to touch any of the other assets. And then once you have 2 or 3 months of cash put away somewhere, the next bucket to kind of fill out is like a stretch buffer, or something still that's kind of cash-like, but would be used hopefully less frequently or not at all, and can gain more value over time, at least beat interest rates, things like that, and debasement and inflation. Stretch is a relatively new product, but it is a really great example for this type of buffer, where maybe you have like 2 to 3 months in cash and then additional 4 to 6 months in stretch. Stretch will be earning about 11.5% per year. So your stretch holdings are still kind of being treated like a cash-like instrument in this model, but you are bringing in like 11.5%, which is great. So you can use that to reinvest the dividends. If you wanted to, you could pull them out and live on them or use them as income. But these are kind of like your two main buffers up to like 6 months, give or take. Again, it's kind of up to the individual and family, but this will greatly help you weather the storm of life, and who knows what can happen, right? So after you have these buffers taken care of, this layer 1, layer 2, then we're talking Bitcoin. You want to basically put the remainder of the money, the remainder of the income or the savings that you have. You can DCA into this, but this is where you want your extremely long-term savings. This is what you're buying spot Bitcoin with, or maybe an ETF, And this is the bedrock of the strategy. You have an emergency cash and a stretch buffer so that you never have to touch the Bitcoin. And this is the piece that we can take out loans, leverage, do these things, open a line of credit against. And we're trying to hang on to the Bitcoin, never sell it, so that you're appreciating over the longest possible time period. And then one day, you may be somewhat satisfied with your Bitcoin stack, or you want to start splitting, or maybe 70% of the DCA goes into Bitcoin, and then you can look into things that could possibly beat the return of Bitcoin, right? So leveraged amplify Bitcoin strategy is an excellent example of this, because they're basically using what they call amplification, which is analogous to leverage, but it's not leverage because it's not debt, so that you can just buy the MSTR ticker and there's no margin call, there's no issue with calling your shares or any of these types of things. So you don't really have to manage it like you have to manage a loan. There's no LTV on buying spot MSTR, and theoretically it can return a higher rate than Bitcoin. It's obviously not direct cold storage Bitcoin, which is why we'd want a higher return on it, but it is like amplified spicy Bitcoin, so maybe you can even get a better return than just on the regular Bitcoin. But looking at these 4 layers, these 4 buckets, this is a very simple way, but very powerful way to structure a portfolio where you have emergency cash, a stretch buffer, and then a big pile of Bitcoin, and you can leverage or sprinkle in MSTR as you see fit. And then the first one for emergency cash, kind of touched on this already. I like River. You can find other places as well, but something that pays you a decent interest rate, but River pays in Bitcoin, which is really nice. So you're earning Bitcoin on top of your emergency cash, which is really cool. Stretch is pretty straightforward. Just find a place where you can buy STRC. I would recommend, when I'm talking about it this way, just like a regular brokerage account. If you have it in an IRA or something like that, you have to pay you probably have to pay penalties and issues, and there's tax downside with that. The reason why we're holding Stretch in this scenario, in this model, is for its cash-like properties. It's going to stay around par, $100 per share, and we never want to sell it. Hopefully we don't have to touch it, but if we do, we don't want to have to pay tax or anything like that outside of normal taxes. An IRA is a little bit different. And then we're collecting 11.5% per year. The price volatility should be very little, around par. And again, we're trying to treat this like a cash-like position, but it just has higher return. Then once we have those satisfied, we're DCAing into Bitcoin. We're never selling. When Bitcoin price appreciates, or we have enough of a stack and it makes sense either in retirement or to supplement income or to do something else with this, there's these options to borrow against this, the Bitcoin borrow die strategy. Start with a very low LTV. You need to manage it. You need to pay attention to it. That's kind of the downside of borrowing against your Bitcoin. I mean, you really have to keep an eye on it. You don't want any margin calls. You don't want anything like this. So way overly collateralized at a 10% LTV is very conservative. So you won't have to worry about things like that. But it is kind of you can consider an active position, in the sense that you should, you need to pay attention to it, make sure that it's managed properly. It's not like a huge deal. It doesn't take a ton of work, but it's you do have to manage it. And then when you're either satisfied with your Bitcoin position or looking to swing for the fences, so to speak, you want to find things that can outrun provide return in excess of just what Bitcoin can do. And Amplify Bitcoin strategy is a really great example for this. As they have their perpetual preferreds and other debt and these types of things, they're returning Bitcoin yield per share, and it's a way to amplify the returns of Bitcoin. I like to think of it like spicy Bitcoin, and this part of the portfolio is just really to juice returns. So let's say you have $8,000 per month in expenses. This is kind of like a breakdown of what to do and kind of values around it. You can adjust this, of course, for yourself, for your family. It's very personal, so changes as you see fit. But this is just one example of having either like $16,000 to $24,000 in emergency cash, true emergencies. All sorts of things can happen in life. You want some type of buffer to be able to deal with that. Then we're looking at our stretch buffer of like $32,000 to $48,000. This is, again, it's not quite emergency cash, but we're treating it cash, like just in case things happen. You never know what's going on. Like you might need the money someday, right? That's why stretch is nice, because it's going to stay at par, and you can sell if you need to. You don't really want to, but if you need to, it's going to retain its par value, and then you can take those dividends and probably reinvest them, which would just grow your position a little bit, or use them as income, as yield, as you see fit. Then once these are satisfied, it's just all Bitcoin all the time. Try to get as much as you possibly can. And then at some point, you may want to start to split your DCA from just Bitcoin into like strategy as well. Anything for like bonuses or like, side hustles or extra income that's coming in could be allocated between Bitcoin and strategy once you have these number 1 and number 2 buckets satisfied. And the reason for this portfolio construction, the strategy, is that it's simple, it protects you, it puts safety first, but then it allows your Bitcoin and strategy position to compound over time. We don't want to touch it. We want time in the market, which is incredibly important to get that upside. And then as the Bitcoin bucket really grows and materializes, it's something that we can take loans out against if we need income without selling, without taxable events. So this is just kind of a look at basic portfolio construction. How much cash and emergency buffer should you have? Once you satisfy that, what do you do with the excess funds? And then what options are there kind of beyond Bitcoin if you're looking for even further upside? So let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and like this, and I will see you later.